Happy Happy Friday. I'm not going to do the, the roundup this week. I think I need a little break from the Reddits. Nothing against the Reddits per se. But over the past couple of days, I just I keep seeing stuff popping up, and frankly, it's stuff that I just am not particularly interested in. Like, I don't know what it is. There's something in the air, but I keep seeing these things about kind of pitting DCC and Shadow Dark. Like, oh, what's DCC or Shadow Dark? And like, why? I don't know why that's suddenly a thing. And really, the big part of me is like, who cares? But I think I've said before, there's been sort of a dearth of topics on there of late that I've been interested in. I may have missed some, and it's just my one person's opinion. And I'm glad that people are having conversations. I'm glad it's inspired discussion, but it's not the kind of discussion that I'm into. I do have two parts here. One's a little kind of background work, but I just kind of want to do it, and I figure I could do it on here. I guess it's a little bit self-serving, so I want to kind of talk through some stuff on my game that I'm working on, and this part here. So this is from the zine that I just released, Hexed notebook number 1. A question has come up on the forums. I tried to get some more detail, but I didn't really get too much out of it. Basically, it was there's one of the forum members who changed. He seems to change. The forum members are on the Discord, I should say. Whoops, let me get out of the Discord. And that's not even the right Discord. On my Discord, whose current name is Zonrierid, which is a play on, they're doing the Zag, they're doing Zagzigs. They're doing like a Gygax Castle Zagzig kind of thing, and they're spelling their name backwards. And I think their real first name is Sid, but and they post a lot of stuff on Reddit. If you go to OSR on Reddit, they post a lot of stuff. They had recently become really much a fan of the Wilderness Survival Guide. And I remember when they posted about on the Discord, I remember thinking like, it's a cool book. For me, it's just way too much, way in the nitty-gritty, way too much on the kind of edge cases and things that I don't find. I'm really looking for a lot, especially now. I'm looking for what gives me a lot of bang for my buck, what gives me a lot of punch. And you get all kinds of cool stuff. But to me, it's a lot of things like, and it's in that AD&D mold where they want to be really granular with every 7 degrees to add this modifier and start adding up percentages. And there's some cool stuff in there. I mean, it's really worth checking out. It's kind of a fascinating document. But I don't know many people who actually use it, because it just seems to add a lot of complexity. And part of me goes, I just don't know why you can't say, hey, is it freezing? Is it cool? Is it cold? Is it freezing? Is it frozen? Or something like that. And just do some bottom line things like that and not necessarily have to be super granular with it. Well, they came back after a stretch with it. And I'm just going to quote them from the Discord if I can find it, which was, they said they're working on some homebrew rules for Wilderness Adventures because after reading the Wilderness Survival Guide thoroughly, and this is them, I find it far too unbalanced for a hex crawl. I'm still looking for an advanced system with actions that players can take, which is sorely lacking in classic Wilderness Adventures compared to Dungeon Adventures. And my question, and I think I posted this to Blue Sky and nobody responded to it, but it could have been because I didn't post it very well. I didn't frame it very well. It is essentially, well, what are the advanced actions that you're looking for? And what is it that, and I'm kind of hoping, since I don't think they come on the stream, I'm kind of hoping that someone else will have their idea. And I know Ian, who pops into streams often, kind of chimed in and said that they would love that system of actions. And I kind of wonder, what kind of system of actions are you, or what kind of actions are you looking for? What I've tried to do, and you can see here with kind of this, I have the Wilderness Survival section open, and in my other things in the version that's the Do Anything D6 Wilderness, and kind of all the stuff that I've done, I've tried to essentially make frameworks where you can essentially have a generic mechanic, much like your D20, or if you want to use 1 and 6, whatever it is, X and 6, and then you can simply add some modifiers, do some things to get what you want. So when I asked, well, hey, what actions are you looking for? The one that came to mind for them, the one that I did get out before everyone and it was kind of later at night, and I think they might be overseas, or I don't think they're even in my time zone, or maybe even not even close to my time zone. So there might have been a lot of reasons why I didn't get a lot of responses. I didn't really push it too much, and the kind of conversation. Unfortunately, the conversation died. I would have been really interested in continuing it. And if you were in here later and you have some ideas, please let me know. Was, searching for monsters. I think they said scouting for monsters. I think the exact quote would be going out scouting to check if there are monsters, or climbing the tops of the trees to get a wider view of the horizon. So these are two things, obviously, that totally make sense to do. You want to scout out and look for monsters, and you want to get a view of the surrounding area. Now, classically, the scouting around looking for monsters, in my mind anyway, and I'm sure people play it in a million different ways, is kind of baked into your one creature check and your encounter distances. The better you do on those rolls, or, I don't know, you're not making the players aren't usually making the rolls, or the GM's making the rolls, but whatever, the more towards the player. So if you roll an encounter and then you get a lot of distance, that means you oh my gosh, we've seen traces of a dragon and it's a fair distance away, so now we can move over. That is essentially you scouting ahead. I think the assumption is much like moving in the dungeon, that there's a certain amount of stuff you're considered to be doing just by default. So much like in a dungeon, the rate of movement seems slow, but the rules are baking in that you're trying to be as quiet as possible, that you are mapping, that you are being at least mindful of obstacles and things like that. You're not rushing around and you're not trying to make a bunch of noise. And so that kind of sets up the distance. So now in that's why you get kind of, the idea is that's why you get the numbers that you get. Why is it only a 2 in 6 chance of you triggering a trap as opposed to a much higher number? And part of it is, well, dungeon's supposed to be old and stuff doesn't work right. And I think the other thing is because you're being reasonably careful. It's kind of those two things put together. And of course, why are you able to map a dungeon? Well, you're able to map a dungeon because you're taking that time as you're moving, you're not running around. And so I think in the wilderness, similarly, you're kind of doing those already. You are already at least taking some steps to scout out your area, and at least that part of it. Now, the navigation one is interesting, right? You're trying to look up to get a thing. Now, again, a lot of it depends also on, hey, Ian, and if you have ideas, so Ian, part of what I'm riffing on right now is you and the other fellow from the Discord talking about your advanced set of actions for the wilderness. So since you were someone who triggered this whole thing, if you have some you'd like to share, I'd love to hear them in the comments and I can try to pick up on them. So the scouting one is oftentimes baked in, but I could see situations where maybe you're looking for a particular monster, or you just want to be kind of doubly sure, or maybe you want to find out what monsters are in the area. Not necessarily is something about to jump on us out of the dark or out of the bushes or whatever, but just what because I think it would be really a good idea maybe to look at and say, well, what is here, right? What kind of creatures can we expect to meet in these woods and these plains or wherever we happen to be? And then the one with the navigation one is interesting, and it's not, the looking out, seeing where you are. Again, it is kind of baked into what you're doing, and it also really depends on how you're running your hex crawls. If you're running hex crawls with player-facing hex maps, then you can already see basically the stuff around you. And then I think, other than that, it's maybe more of an action, right? You're climbing, when Bilbo climbs the tree in he's in Mirkwood, he's not getting anything really granular. It's really this moment of saying, hey, we're not that far away. We could see the end of it. We could see the lonely mountain beyond. It's like, oh, great. It's not like a super granular thing. So oftentimes that's kind of baked into your movement anyway. But again, I could see a case where, hey, I want to go and scout around because maybe we're lost, or that would be one. Hey, we're lost. I mean, which I guess is kind of the Mirkwood thing too, is we're lost. We need to orient ourselves, and okay, we're close and it's this far away and whatever. So coming back to these procedures I present here is I have an activities thing, which just gives you that generic activities where you could just take an action somebody wants to do, and they can, you basically hash out well, what are you doing? What tools and what do you have at your disposal to do such a thing? And then depending on the terrain, it might add some difficulty in the mix. And I kind of envision this as fulfilling what we need to do, fulfilling that, hey, I need to adjudicate some player action in the wilderness. How can we do that? And maybe it's a mistake because this is written with the procedure, but there's no, I didn't add a whole bunch of guidance in here about when to use it because I'm trying to keep things really I'm really trying to, these are all half-letter pages. I'm trying to keep it clean and neat and pithy. So I'm kind of leaving it to you to do that, but I don't know if it's worth, and I guess I will just because I can, and this is my show. I can maybe go through at least an example of using that to do something like, say, like scouting for monsters or doing something else. And here I'm just going to take what is this? This is Jamaica for the working man. The other part I want to mention before we go into examples, and Ian, like I said, if you have some examples of actions you're looking for. So in the dungeon, right, what are the actions? Because I was thinking the other thing. He said, hey, I want this list of advanced actions like we have in a dungeon, in dungeon crawling, or in dungeon adventures. And I was thinking, like, well, what? And I was thinking to myself, well, what are the... Do we have, is there a list of actions out there? And there kind of is and there kind of isn't. I don't think that there's not a menu, at least I don't really consider a menu of things, but they're kind of through conventions and just kind of how everything's. We know that there are some things that have specific procedures to do, though often they're not really dissimilar. So you have kind of your, classically, right, doors being stuck, so you can kind of bang down a door. You can listen at a door. And then as far as non-thieves, is there another one? I think those are those are the only two I think about that have kind of fixed procedures. Like, right? So you're knocking down doors, was it 2 and 6 or whatever it is, to bang down the door? I think it also might be 2 and 6. And I'm sorry if my X and 6 numbers are off. I could look it up. I don't care because it doesn't really matter. X and 6 for listening at doors, X and 6 for banging down doors. There are procedures, though how often they come up and how many people use them for, it's not even really a procedure. They tell you, hey, if you're being chased by intelligent creatures and you throw loot behind you as you're running away, they might stop. And then food for animals and animal types, they might stop. That's kind of it. Like thieves have their skills, right? That have hiding, the hiding in shadows, move silently, backstab, I guess, pick climbing. So I wonder if there's a little bit of one, maybe I'm missing some, but I'm wondering if it's almost like we have this mentality that there's all these actions for the dungeon when there really isn't. I guess, we have I guess check for secret doors would be one. Okay, we have check for secret doors as a specific action with kind of a mechanism attached. All right, so Ian says, ideally their vision is to keep a turn-by-turn structure where whether in combat, exploration, travel, or downtime with a 2 action per turn system, actions or travel, for example. Okay, so Ian's talking about having specific IC. So, but I think, I guess we have that already. Or I guess like in my system, we kind of have that, right? Again, this is self-serving on my part because I get to talk about my thing, but this is my show, my channel. I like to do that. So like, again, the activities, like in my system, you have that, like everything, right? You have your wilderness turns and then everything kind of takes turns. And the one thing I do that maybe is a little bit more granular than I think a lot of other systems do at the moment anyway, is the things that are in the harder terrain types take more turns. So I am slowing things down a bit. Of course, you can ignore as much of this or not as you want. But if you're in say the mountains, to do something that would take 1 turn in a hex of grassland is going to take longer in the mountains. That's the way. And to me, it makes sense. Mountains, you got all kinds of things going on. It's harder to move. Everything's slower. So it takes longer. And in the grasslands, free and clear, you can see. I think the doing multiple things in a turn in my system really comes from kind of dividing and conquering. Who is doing what? It's not everybody has to do a thing. So you can have two people looking for a campsite. Two people are out doing this. Two people are doing, right? You could split up your party to do multiple things, or have everybody come together to get better chances. So you can kind of divide and conquer, but I'm not splitting up the turns. I like the one turn kind of one thing. I like that in BX. I think it's just a simpler way. Hey, one turn a thing. You're moving in the dungeon, that's a turn. You're moving in the wilderness, that's a turn. You're exploring you're searching a room in the dungeon, that's a turn. You're searching a room, or you're searching an element of the wilderness, that's at least a turn, right? And just like the size of a room dictates how many turns it will take to search, the 10 by 10, the yield 10 by 10 room takes one turn, but if you're searching a huge turn, then maybe maybe we don't. Ian says that they like a 2 or 3 action per turn system where certain action situations might take more time. Yeah, I just want to get bottom line. So, like, for me, because I think doing fractional turns, it just ends up being a mess, in my opinion. I'm sure folks make it work. I don't need to do fractional turns. It doesn't matter. I mean, in the wilderness, the amount of time that a turn takes is more strict because your turns do indicate your day passing. So in a dungeon, it's pretty. I think you can just almost hand wave how long particular turns are because it doesn't really matter. It matters in terms of your torches and stuff, but as long as you're getting the economy is the same. If you say it's 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes to an hour, that stuff, it all just kind of stays the same. Out in the wilderness, it's a little bit different because day and night and that cycle does matter usually. And so, the turns being kind of what they are, being 3 hours. I like 3 hours. I don't know. I just like 3-hour blocks versus 4-hour blocks or two blocks for the, one day, whatever you do it, right? They kind of stay the same. They stay. I do have a part here that you could try to rush in activities. So you do have to spend, I think, one turn, but you can, if like you're in the wilderness, the mountains and you're desperate and you don't have time, you can try to spend a turn instead of spending 4 turns to try to do a thing, but you just get disadvantaged for each of the turns you're supposed to be using that you're not. But I don't get into fractional turns because I just think it just becomes messy for accounting purposes. And then the other thing I think is just, and maybe in the wilderness, it's not as big of a deal because things are abstracted more, but in the dungeon, you'll get people to argue with you. It takes 10 minutes to do this thing. And it's like, you could call it however much time you want. It takes a turn. Capital T turn. You can quantify your capital T turn however you like, but it's taken a turn, whether you think it should kind of, or not. Now, if you want to have, I suppose if you want to do, one thing you can do is if you feel like the turns, and some games, some systems, some procedures use turns that are really long. I mean, like some of them are like 6-hour turns. And so when you're using and this is part of why I don't like those big turns. I'm going to be saying turn a lot for the next few minutes. The turns of that kind of duration is because it becomes really hard to kind of collapse them. Unless you're being just really kind of loosey-goosey. I feel like Mythic Bastionland, which I played, I guess I could talk about that too, maybe today, because I played Mythic Bastionland. It was last week. Just didn't get around to talking about it. Played Mythic Bastionland. And it was really fun. Daniel ran it. I think Daniel's he might be running a solo game. I think I mentioned this on their stream, maybe on the Prep and Play channel. I don't know if he's streaming it yet. I have to look and see. It's so hard to find stuff on my YouTube feed now. Things just kind of seem to get lost in the shuffle. And so I haven't seen his videos pop up yet. But in any case, we played. And they have, I think their turn structure might be like morning, maybe it's morning, noon, evening. I don't know. It's a longer structure. But I feel like the way it's kind of, I don't know, the way the game plays, I think you're just in general, the minutia, if you think about a game that maybe gets really into the details and then one that's kind of staying above it, I feel like they're really staying above it. They're really, it's like high, a highlight event and then whatever. It's a little bit, I don't know. It's a little bit different. Or at least right now it has a feeling of being different. Maybe it's not over time. I'm not sure, but the vibe I get with that one is, I guess as a player, I didn't find myself concerned about how much time in a turn was taking. I don't know if in yield kind of OSR game, the amount of time matters. Maybe just the amount of turns in the day matter. I'm not sure. It also depends what we're doing. And in Mythic Bastionland, you're making every time, unless you hit a barrier or something, you're an obstacle or whatever they call it. You're going whole hexes. The terrain doesn't impact your movement, so your progress on a daily basis is kind of longer or swifter in a sense that it would be in a system like mine, unless you're keeping to roads and grassland stuff. And again, I like that because I want that stuff to matter. I want that choice of, hey, do we move across the plains, which in distance is longer, but it's easier, we'll make more progress? Or do we try to shortcut over the mountains, which if we get there, it'll be good, but there's a better chance of getting lost and all that. Like, I like those kind of choices. And I always feel a little bit like, man, I wish systems didn't just ditch that stuff entirely, because then it just becomes, not that it doesn't matter, but it becomes more of a flavor thing. And I kind of like, I really do like when these things have both a fictional impact and that impact is mirrored with some kind of mechanical impact. I guess ideally, right? That's the ideal, is you'd want everything that has a fictional impact to have some kind of mechanical impact. If it's cold enough that you're fictionally positioning yourself as it's beyond freezing, then you should have like a little penalty to your thing. I just don't need it like in the Wilderness Survival Guide where they might be doing increments of 5 degrees. Like I don't need that. Just like I'm shivering cold versus not shivering cold might work. Ian mentions the perception of a wasted turn, which is fair, but I think to me, the wasted turn in combat is significant because you're waiting, right? So, okay, I took my turn in combat in a game with long combat like 5e, and it's not like it's the 3rd edition combat could be kind of long too. And so now I got to wait 20 minutes, a half an hour, depending on whatever. I'm waiting, and I didn't really do it. All I did was drink a potion. Now I'm waiting. But with the activities we're doing, kind of wilderness and dungeon adventuring, I don't feel like it's wasted because it's like that. Everyone's picking a thing to do. You're rolling your dice, you're doing your thing, and you're moving on. It's not, to me, there's not a big gap. So I don't think the wasted turn really comes up, unless the only thing I could see it is like if you're on wilderness time where it's like, hey, I'm exploring, and you're like, okay, that's going to take you 3 hours, and then everyone else is playing on dungeon time, and it's like, okay, your guys are going to be basically delving the entire dungeon in the time where I just said I'm exploring, so I'm sitting around. Like there, I say, yeah, that feels out of bounds, but that's not really how it is, because like, oh, I'm looking for the campsite, I'm searching for the thing, I'm doing whatever. Okay, now we're all going to roll dice, and it's all going to basically resolve at the same time. And if you're just like, hey man, I kick up and rest, and I don't really do anything, I've been there, like, oh, like, it's like, I don't know, I guess the same way I don't feel like it's a wasted turn if you're, you woke up from camping overnight and the wizard's like, I got to go memorize my spells. And the cleric's like, I got to go pray to my God. And you're like, and you're the fighter. And you're like, I sharpened my sword. Like I don't see it as wasted. Yeah. As the fighter, like I didn't do anything. I don't know. I do nothing, but that resolves in it. And like, okay, I got my spells. Like, okay, I did my thing and you're moving. I don't feel like that's wasted. So I guess that's just the way I look at it. Now, getting back to what I was going to say is, let's say we want to talk about scouting for monsters. I actually had a couple different versions I was thinking about for this, and I might write this up in something, I don't know. And not of all of it uses my system. There's some really easy ways which might be helpful to somebody for, if they, just a way you can use what you already have to do things, right? You can leverage the stuff you already have. So you're scouting. So there are a couple of things to do. Okay, one, let's say something's happened. You're on the wilderness. Maybe you had I'm just going to make up a scenario. You have your cart. You're on some kind of road or track, and your cart wheel breaks. And now you're thinking, okay, we're stuck here. Maybe someone goes to the GM and says, hey, we have our driver, maybe one of us like, oh, I'm kind of crafty. Can I we need to just jerry rig something. We're not far. Can I just jerry rig something? And maybe the guy goes, yeah, you can, but it's going to take you a turn. And you'll probably have to travel in the evening, and then you probably have to look at it again, but you can get to wherever you're going. But it's like, okay, well, I'm going to work on that. Like, great. I'm going to do that. Boom, boom, boom. And someone else says, hey, you know what? We're in a kind of a desolate area and we've heard reports of different things. So I want to scout for monsters. One simple way to do that is just to roll a wandering creature check. And the wandering creature check will just tell you, is there a monster around or not? So you roll your wandering creature check. If you get nothing, then the person scouts around, they don't find anything. If the person scouts around and they find something, then you could do a few things. One, you could give them a bonus, say an extra +1 or something on the not surprised bit. You could do a couple things. And you can also factor this into how you're handling it. But anyway, I would just say this. Okay, scouting for monsters. Hey, Mr. Rourke. All right. You go out to scout. I'm going to roll a wandering creature check. Do I get a monster? Yes or no? Okay, I do. All right. Now I'm going to roll for distance. I forget, was it 3d6 times 100 or I don't know, for whatever it is. All right, I got... So maybe I do that. So maybe I would roll some number of dice. But usually when you're rolling a wandering creature check, the party is moving. And again, I put scouting as part of the moving, but this is a deliberate action to scout. So maybe you say, you know what? I'm going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to give you an extra bonus. It's like you only get surprised on you get surprised on, say, a 2 and 6. Hey, let's explore Park Slope. Cromie, are you in Brooklyn? How does one know about? I'm sure I've mentioned Park Slope now and again, but that hits close to home. So maybe you say, hey, you know, it's only a 2 and 6 chance you're going to get surprised, but since you're actually scouting, like you're spending your whole turn talking about like the wasted turn or whatever, you know what, you're not going to get surprised by this one. Or maybe I'm going to say it's only a 1 in 6 chance. I'm going to have your chance of getting surprised, or maybe I'll let you roll with advantage, or I'll roll with advantage. I literally rolled double ones, which is hilarious, so they would get surprised. But you might say, no, whatever we'll do. Okay, great. So now I didn't roll a surprise. All right. And now I might say also, and on top of that, because you spent a whole one of your turns scouting and, you're doing that. So I'm instead of rolling, 3d6 times 100 for yards, I think is what it is. But again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm going to roll 4d6, or maybe I'll even double it and say 66, because you're scouting, you're trying to get a jump on it. So now instead of it being just, 100 yards away, now it's, what do I have here? 170 yards away. And then you could do something like, hey, you know what? And this is one of those things too, where you get, okay, when it first comes out, hey, I'm repairing the wagon. Great. Maybe someone says, I'm going to help, but there's other party members and they say, you know what? I'm going to go up and scout too. Oh, I'm going to scout too. All right. So you get some extra party members scouting. So then you can kind of do the thing. You can say, hey, for everybody scouting, I'm going to roll that dice. So, going back to that surprise, I rolled 2 1s because I gave me advantage. Maybe I'll roll like 4 dice now. And, I got to roll 1s across the board, or somebody is going to get the thing because they're sending out 4 different people. That to me makes sense. And then I can roll even more distance, or I can roll advantage on the distance. Say, hey, and I'm going to keep it to a 4 and 6, but I'm going to let you roll some extra dice, and you can use the high numbers unless you want it to be closer. And then you can even factor in like, does it, you can even say, well, hey, now instead of 1 die to see whether it is surprised, I'm going to roll a few dice because you're able to kind of manage the encounter a bit more. These are all things you can do to say, okay, that was the scouting for monsters action, and it's just using stuff that's already in the. We're just leveraging what's already in the books, which is just your wandering creature check and encounter distance, and that's all. And wandering creature check, surprise, encounter distance, and that is your scouting for monsters. Or you can use something like what I have. Say, hey, we're going to make that an activity. We're going to give you a whatever in 6 chance. The one thing I'll say in favor of mine, if you want to, is it does have more mechanisms that you can add them in of addressing different terrain types or the weather or other factors like that, but essentially ends up being the same. Now for the other example, which was climbing up a tree to climbing up a tree to see your surroundings. So you're pulling a Bilbo in the Hobbit. So you're in some kind of woods. It doesn't have to be, you could be climbing a high hill, right? It could be a bunch of things. We're saying it's climbing trees. Now you already have kind of climbing checks. So you could kind of use that, however, if you want to give them a 1 in 6 chance, or you want to say, you know what? I would hand wave a lot of this stuff unless you feel like you're in an area where the trees, this is the kind of thing where I tend to give adventurers the benefit of the doubt, especially when it's not a panic situation. you want to climb the tree because you can, you know what I mean? Especially if you're spending a whole like 3 hours to do this thing, you're going to find a tree that's got limbs that are kind of set up for you, right? If you're being chased by a bear, you're going to maybe climb up the closest tree you can find and get in there. And then you're in panic mode. And so the tree may be imperfect and everything may be set up. But if you have multiple hours just to find a tree to climb up, I'm presuming you can find a tree that fits your athleticism and with branches that can hold your, essentially you can find kind of the tree. But you could have them roll. But essentially, do you even need to really a procedure for that so much as, okay, you get up, you look around. At that point, it comes like, well, how far can you see? Do you want, this is where you can kind of get granular if you want to, but to me, I would just give them like, you can see hexes around you. You can look at the weather and say, okay, if the weather's really crappy, it's all cloudy and maybe it's foggy, then you can't see very far. You can maybe see the edges of your hex. Or if it's a clear sky, and of course, it also depends on the size of your hexes, which is another reason why I like smaller hexes. Because then if it's like, because some people like the hexes a whole day's travel. It's like, well, when they're in that big hex, if there's not details in that hex, well, I don't want to give them a whole day away unless it's like perfect conditions. So then what am I giving them? In this case, I can say, okay, it's 3 miles. You're somewhere in there. So I'm going to say, you know what, you can look around. I don't usually mess around too much with where someone is inside the hex. You can see 1 hex away. And if it's really good conditions, you can see 2 hexes away. Whatever. You can also throw terrain in there. If you're already in the mountains and you're climbing up and looking down, you can see pretty far. If you're in a valley, you're not going to see very far, depending on the contours of the valley. So you figure that out. I don't even know if you really need a whole procedure to do that. Now, certainly me or somebody else, and I'm sure people have written them up for you, but what is the procedure really doing there? You can just do yourself a thing. Now, of course, again, if you want to use my activity thing, you can kind of say, hey, I'll give you success. Rolling it, you're really just trying to see what's around you, and you can roll dice for how many people are looking. And if you're climbing trees, that would give you some kind of advantage. Again, you have hours to do it. So I just think whatever. To me, it's more like how many people do you want to get to do it, and how many things do you have a spyglass or something? Okay, great, I'll give you that. Do you have whatever? Okay, great, and then just roll some dice and see. But that's almost the one where I don't even really know, like, oh, does this really need a thing? But I am curious if people are like, not I don't want to say what is the market, but are people looking for these kind of lists? Because I don't know in dungeons, I'm trying to think as a player, if I read all the rules, I'll get a sense of, if I read through the players section in BX, in the B, let's say, I'm pretty sure I'll get the sense of, hey, if you listen to doors, it's this much. I think those are all in the player section, right? But I know it's not like I get a list, like here are your dungeon actions. And I just think as we play, we just get so in the habit of, here's our laundry list. We can check for secret doors, we can check for traps, we can listen at doors, and we can essentially break doors down. And I guess pick locks or break locks is kind of the thing, right? And we're just so used to it that you get into the wilderness. And this actually, there was a guy, I forget his channel's name. I want to say it's something with Lich in it. Is it Lich? It might be. Is it Lich House? Lich Lord? Lich Apartment? Lich. Hold on a minute. Does it come out? What is it? Let me see. Yeah, it might be. Yeah, Lich House. And he had an interesting video the other day talking about what he learned from the Glass Cannon's Shadow Dark actual play. And one of the things he mentioned was that it had been ingrained in him since forever, since BX, that the wilderness was something that you did only when you were advanced. Right, when you're 4th level or whatever it is, I guess 4th level, you're graduating from the basic rules. That's when you go in the wilderness. You don't touch the wilderness until you get there, because the wilderness is a dangerous place. And he felt like it was like a little bit mind blowing that the Glass Cannons thing kind of started off with them going out into the wilderness at level 1. And he was like, wow, that was cool. And he just, and there was just, that was his thing. And seeing some people do that, just kind of blew it. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know if people look at the wilderness and they feel like it's lacking because you don't actually get as much time playing in the wilderness, because I think most often games are in those lower levels and they're more in dungeons. And then I think sometimes when people get to the wilderness, and this is just my sense of it, I don't really know. Are they hand waving a bunch of stuff? But I guess what I'm saying is that the tradition of dungeon crawling that has kind of given us this sort of implicit, if not explicit, like list of the like actions available and how they work, didn't develop as much for the wilderness, because so often people just kind of did other things in the wilderness, or they just kind of hand waved it away, or whatever they did. And so you didn't have a lot of people they kind of get that same thing. So they look at the wilderness and feel like it's lacking in the structure that dungeoneering has. But I wonder if that's just because more rules concentrate there and we just have more used to it. And so we see the structure, even though there's not all that much. I guess people don't necessarily write in Wilderness Adventures, hey, you could listen to door. I mean, like, because some of the stuff too is, again, that there's the time frames, and definitely, I guess, a weakness of, say, the X and the BX thing is that really the wilderness just comes down to getting lost and running into stuff. And they don't get into at all. They don't even give it like, oh, hey, by the way, if this other thing happens, this is how you can do it. They don't care. They just don't care about that. You can camp where you want to go. That's fine. It's just about, hey, are you getting lost? Are you running into monsters? Other than that, like, it's kind of a black box. And so maybe that's the other thing. And BX being so much of the source for a lot of systems, the fact that they don't cover a lot of that stuff means that it just doesn't get covered, I guess. But I will say, I've covered a bunch of the stuff. And I think, but you know, use whatever supplements you want. I think there's a lot more there. You just got to be, you know, I think just use what we're on here for the dungeon. If we already have listening at doors, and if someone's like, I want to listen for animal sounds. And it's like, okay, what do I want to use? Well, just use their listen at doors thing. Let's roll. Okay, you got a whatever in 6 chance of listening. Again, use a wandering creature check if you're unsure of what could be like and that's the other thing. So here's the other thing I was thinking about. So I was just saying right there, right? Use a wandering creature check. Well, what happens if they're looking for a specific monster, or they're listening for something specific, or it's not about because if you roll a wandering creature check, there's a good chance. I think it's even I mean, if you're using like BX, there's a flat 50% chance at least that nothing's around. Nothing of note. Well, of course, birds, bees, whatever, but nothing of note. Okay. If instead, let's say they are scouting, and you roll your wandering creature check to see if they run into anything immediate. You're like, nope, don't get anything. Okay. But what you can also do is, if you want to then don't have it be, and maybe this is to Ian's phrase of kind of the empty or wasted turn. Well, we were going scouting around, and no, we didn't see anything imminent, but we had to have seen something or whatever. It's like, okay, now you could just roll, like, where's my book? Hold on a minute. All right. Got my book. You can just sit there and say, okay, so they're going out scouting. All right, we're going back to our example of the cart's being repaired. We send out some folks to scout. They don't see anything, you know, that we rolled a wandering creature check to see, is anything imminent? And the answer was no, nothing is imminent. So they say, okay. But at the same time, this place isn't empty. So something's not imminent doesn't mean that there's not something there. So the next thing we can do is you can say, well, and you can have some fun with it. So you can say, okay, we're going to say, because they're on a cart and they're on kind of a road, I'm going to say they're in the plains. They're in the grasslands. So here I can look at the grasslands encounter table. So let's just say there are 4 party members who are scouting. So I'm going to roll, and this is a D8. And we can even make this, to make it even more exciting, if I can find a D8. Where did my D8s go? I gotta have a D8 here somewhere. Hold on a second. No. I got a drawer full of dice. They're sometimes hard to see. Is that a D8? That looks like a D4. That's something else entirely. D8. Here we go. Okay. So we're going to roll a D8 for each person who's scouting. I rolled a 2. I got a flyer. So What's a flyer? Now, here's where you can have some fun. I don't have to give them all the exact information up front. I can say, you know what, you found like an odd droppings or something, right? You found some clearly a turd of some kind, but you're not sure what it is, but you found that. So that would mean, and now if I wanted to, I could do the whole thing. I could roll on the flyer table and I can see what it is. But like you look at the flyers and they're, hawks, bees. I guess I should roll because not everything makes turds on the table. I got a 1. So some kind of cockatrice thing. But I might say, so I can say, oh, I know it's a cockatrice, so maybe it's got a feathers or something odd. Okay, the second person rolled a 4, so they get an animal. So now I can roll for that one. Animal in the grasslands, I get 11, so I get rattlesnake. So maybe, hey, Croco, so maybe I get, maybe we talk about a shed skin. Maybe you hear a rattle, right? The third person, they rolled a 1, so I got men. So now they're getting, and here with men, I can just say, yeah, you see some foot tracks, maybe boot prints. If I want to know what kind of men they are, just for my own satisfaction. Let's see, men, I rolled 2, so they're bandits. So I would just say probably some booted tracks. And then finally the fourth person, all right, rolled a 6, so they got unusual. Okay, this is good. And I rolled a 2, so a blink dog. So maybe with the blink dog, one of them sees some clearly canine kind of dog tracks, but they seem to stop, right? They start out of nowhere, it seems like, and then they blip out, and it just seems like they stop again out of nowhere. And now what's cool about that is and I would definitely write these things down, because what these can almost be is you could almost then take those results and put them in a table. And maybe you can add some other things of being like, here are the monsters that live in this. If you didn't have a list of here are the monsters that live in this woods, if you're using like I am, like you're going back to just your basic wandering creature table and you don't have one for that locality, now you do, because they've scouted around and they've found traces of things and that live in that table, and you could probably fill in a couple more for things that they didn't find that might be on that table, which also is interesting because it kind of encourages the players to take the time to do it. So if you take the time and scout that area around, they'll get the sense of what lives there. And if it's all things, if they get everything like animals and, there's bees and there's hawks and things that are basically not hazards, it might make really good sense to camp in that location, because you can, and I was the GM, I would honor it. Now I might keep a couple floating in there because things move around, and just because there's nothing dangerous in the hex today doesn't mean there won't be something dangerous in there tomorrow. But for a lot of people, that's pretty good. This seems to be kind of safe. It's telling me something that we can count on and we can use. That's really good. On the flip side, if you're not scouting around and doing that stuff, then you might be walking blind into things that you don't know. In the wilderness, you really want to try to avoid walking blindly into things as much as possible, right? That's kind of cool, but really all I'm doing is I'm just using I'm using what we already have, right? I myself don't need a bunch of super specific procedures to run through. Like, let's just run it. We'll just run it like that. What I was thinking about when I originally saw that question about what kind of this kind of special actions or the list of actions, I kind of thought like I could do like a cookbook kind of thing. And maybe I could still write these up in something, because maybe they would be helpful. I know that different people see rules and mechanics in different ways. And I know that for one person, they might make a leap or something that's like, oh my gosh, I totally could just take that, do it. And for other people, their relationship, whatever, their mind, their brain doesn't go there. Maybe it goes other, it's like, oh, and so it's what to me, I go like, well, that's just kind of like, of course you just do this. Like for someone else, it's different. And then there are things for me where someone else like, oh, of course you do this. And I'm like, my mind's blown. So I get it. But if you out there, you have some actions that in the wilderness, talking wilderness specifically, if you have some actions in the wilderness that you feel like could use set procedures for, and I guess the qualifications I would be that I usually try to think of in my head when I am thinking about stuff and I'm not just working, just like firing off the hip. I try to think about what what about it requires a non-generic solution? Now, that a lot of the stuff they just weren't thinking about then. In BX, they could have said, here's your general procedure for doing things, X and 6, and by default it's 2, right? Hey, you have a 2 and 6 chance of succeeding at just about anything mundane coming your way, and here we can modify it. And then, in a way, I kind of wish they would have done that, because then everything else would just be subsumed under that. So you go, oh, listen to doors, 2 and 6. Oh, busting open a door, 2 and 6. Oh, whatever, 2 and 6. Right. It would have been, instead, they just said, they basically said for each, they gave you the thing for each one, and they're kind of the same. Busting down doors is, I think, 2 and 6, but again, it might be something else. And, they're all X and 6, but they don't give it to you in a way, they give it to you in a way that you could end up thinking about each of those procedures as its own special thing. When the reality is I know we all look at it as the generic X and 6 thing, but I just wonder if, man, it would have helped people out if they said, here's this generic mechanic, and here are different ways we're using it, as opposed to, here are these individual things, and oh, by the way, you can think about it as a generic. I wonder if they'd presented it the other way around, would have been helpful. I don't know, because people in the LSR especially love their X and 6, so it's not like people didn't get that, but I don't know if it would have helped with the way people think about actions when they're looking for procedure. I don't think I have anything else for that. I think I've given away over 70 or 80 copies of this so far, community copies. So I'm glad that folks, and they seem to go whenever I've posted one up, because I've sold one, they seem to go pretty quick. So I'm glad that people are enjoying it. I'm not sure what the next one will be, but I'm going to try to kick it out by the end of the next month. So if you're interested in such things, stay tuned. I guess I can switch to myself because I don't need the book. So the other thing that I did, so I guess, let's see. Couple things. Mythic Bastionland I played in last week. I know I talked about this in another stream. I like the system a lot. I think it does a good job of the vibe. It really succeeds on the vibes part. Maybe I should do it. Maybe I can get, I haven't, it's funny. Before I started hanging out with Daniel in person, we would do a fair amount of kind of joint streams. And then since we've been, since I see him just about almost every week, though we were off this past week because we had a couple absences and some other things. We don't just do the streaming, which is just kind of funny. So it'd be good to have him on to do some more, to get his take as he's been doing it for himself, then doing it for us. When he ran the system, he ran it very open because we were all kind of learning, and it was kind of nice. You just see all the mechanics. I think it does take away some of the mystery of stuff. And I know there was one thing where the first time he did it, where he rolled to see what myth we encountered, he rolled it openly, and so we knew it was not the main myth. It was kind of like, oh, it's one of the, like, not the close. I don't know whatever it was. It wasn't like the closest myth or the myth we were trying to work on specifically. It was like another myth. I think he realized after that, it's like, oh, that's not quite as, you don't want to know. I think that's a little bit too much as a player. You don't want to know that stuff. But, it's a game. I feel like the whole game is really all about vibes, right? You're coming in, everything is kind of weird, which is either going to be, I'm not as head over heels in love with just Gonzo. And it's not that, I don't know that I wouldn't consider it Gonzo necessarily, but it's a weird world. You're going to run into a lot of enigmatic people doing enigmatic things that don't totally make sense. He ran into an old man who's blind, or I don't even know if he was old, but I think he was old, but he's definitely blind, and he's walking by himself up a mountain path to nowhere, as far as we could tell, but everything has, and so it's like, okay, but it's part of that mythic significance, right? Everything is kind of mythic. And so I think the fact that you're in that vibe, everything kind of has this mythic experience. You might not know what myth it pertains to, but it's mythic. And I think part of that mythic, much like when they talk about the mythic underworld, is that you're a little bit free for things to kind of not make sense, right? The Funhouse dungeon makes a lot more sense in a mythic underworld situation than it does if you're like, no, this is a structure that's a castle and it's an actual. It's like, okay, then things are like, well, if it's all like that, then it kind of has to. You want it to be more sensible because it's supposed to match up to something sensible. But if it's just like you're in the mythic underworld now and all kinds of crazy stuff can happen, you're like, okay. And I think in the same way, it's okay for things to be a bit of a funhouse world because that's the setup. You're in this space where all these mythic stories are taking place kind of at the same time, and you're there to kind of sort it out. So when you go from an old man doing that to suddenly some kids are out in the middle of nowhere, but they've like painted up like skeletons. They're throwing rocks at you. And then the next thing, there's a forest. These crazy guys doing a bonfire, starting a forest fire, and then to the dead, right? Like it all like, right. It all works in that way that I think if I were playing another adventure, if I were playing another system adventure, I was playing old school Essentials or BX, and that was what was happening, it would probably wouldn't work for me. I'm going to be honest. And I remember when I played, when someone ran me through, unfortunately the game fell apart, but they were running through an Electric Bastionland game. That's kind of what their Electric Bastionland game was like, but I was not on the vibe of that. I was coming in completely kind of blind, fresh. I didn't know what it was about. And the way it worked there in that setting and what I perceived as the setting and everything did not work for me. I didn't like it when we just kept running into what felt like to me in Electric Bastionland, all this stuff felt random. I think what helps in Mythic Bastionland is that it's not random. You may not understand the significance of the old blind guy singing a song about the fall of knights as he's hobbling up a mountain path, but you know that it has some significance. It may not be significant to what you're looking at, but it's not meaningless. It has some significance. And so I think you look at it differently than if it was just a whole bunch of encounters in kind of let's say it was just an open sandbox, like, oh, there's an old man whistling. And you're like, all right, oh, here's forest fires. Oh, here, whatever. It's like, oh, this is it. Like you would feel like the fabric of the world kind of didn't make sense. Here, it doesn't, that part, which I would be affected by. I often find like I kind of want worlds to make sense. Here, I feel like he's found a way to get, at least for me, to get past that a bit, if that makes sense, because everything's kind of all this mythic. You're in the time of legends. You're in kind of a mythic. It can be a little bit crazy, and then we understand that all this stuff, no matter how crazy, how inane it may seem, it has meaning. There's not a meaningless thing in there. Whereas in Electric Bastionland, I felt I was running into a bunch of meaningless obstacles. I could not wait. Here's the difference, right? In Electric Bastionland, I remember, we're in an urban setting. It's more, I guess, steampunky is my recollection. So there was we were getting on the street, and there was a random checkpoint stop. And then after that, and I don't know if this is out of the book or they made up, there was like a truck filled with treacle that spilled, that had wrecked. And these things are all kind of pulling at me, but we had a job to do. It was like, go to the sewers and do this thing. So all these things kept popping up, and I kept thinking to myself, I just want to get to the sewers. Why are you stopping me from getting to the sewers? Like, checkpoints. Here's my papers. Leave me alone. Treacle truck. I don't care. I step over the puddle and leave. Like, I don't care about that. But in the Mythic Bastionland, because they're all significant, I kind of care about them. If I knew that the treacle truck had some significance to the sewer job, even if I don't know what it is, or maybe to something else, I'm like, okay, I better write that down. Oh, a treacle truck. Well, let me see what's going on with the treacle truck, because that might come back later. It's not just a throwaway deal. That might come back. Oh, hey, Reverence Pavon says more electropunk, ray guns, capacitors. And like, yeah, I kind of just remember the fact that there was definitely technology and stuff, but I couldn't remember exactly how it was set up. So I feel like that's an improvement. Now, I love like wandering creatures, and I love to try to work them in. So it's not like I'm averse to having elements that kind of come out of nowhere, that emergent stuff. But I just felt like in the Electric Bastionland, I think a similar approach, things just felt incoherent to me. And that's not, and I haven't really read Electric Bastionland. I guess caveats galore. I haven't really read Mythic Bastionland. It was a short game we played. Somebody else was running it, right? There's a lot I don't know. Okay. But just that kind of as I even just now, as I'm recollecting the two experiences, I can think like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff I see in common, but then there's these differences. And I think the big difference in a positive way for Mythic Bastionland is the fact that since everything has significance, it just hits lands differently than when they don't. And I think for me, I guess for me, it's just from the way I play or the way what I like is I like things to make sense. I don't love just a lot of like strangeness thrown in for strangeness sake. And that's what I felt was like tugging at me in a negative way with Electric Bastionland. Was like, this stuff is just kind of goofy and I don't love it. Like maybe if I was playing a comedic game, you can have fun with it, but I was like, I don't know. I wasn't into that for that. I wasn't in that mindset. I was like, this is not really working for me. Whereas Mythic Bastionland, it was working. I think that's all I think I have. I like my knight. I rolled pretty well on the stats. I actually rolled really well on the stats. So really good. We only got into a couple of fights. What I like about a lot of games, it's not, and I don't know if it's just that what we're playing or how we're doing. And obviously, who you're playing with has a lot to do. And there's a lot of situations where we could have fought things and we didn't. We were really trying to, we like exploring the different things and really kind of working. And I like that. I really like when adventures have a frame that is open to different things. And it's not just all we're doing is fighting. It's just when you get into situations, you can be in a situation where essentially all you can do is fight, or you can be in a situation. And I know that a lot of it's like, no, we can do, but I do feel like sometimes games put you in more situations, and also your fellow players and the GM and everybody. It's not just the adventure where it feels more, I don't want to say railroad, but it feels more like, well, this is the fight now. We got to fight now. Or like, oh, we can do other things. And I appreciate that there was a lot of other things. Revenant says it's very new wave SFF. Yeah, I get it. I should go back and read it. I'd like to go back and read it. Electric Bastionland, that is. The other thing lately that I did was we finished a series of forays into Moria in the One Ring. Well, I got a couple of One Ring things. So first of all, we did Moria and the One Ring. Had a lot of fun. Moria is really, I feel it's really well done. I like so I have some good and some bad things about Free League and the One Ring, though I have some caveats for the bad things. But I feel like their Moria approach is really good. I really like their structure. Okay. And I've incorporated that into the rules I was just showing for the Hexed Position book. I talked about that in the video I did just on that. But I like the journey mechanic. I like the idea that so what happens is you have these phases. And you do different things in the different phases. So when you start off, or at least we've always started off in basically in some kind of a safe space, more or less. Bree, somewhere in Gondor. I forget where we started. I think with Moria, we kind of started kind of hand waving, getting to Moria a bit. Croco asks, is there even any electricity in Electric Bastionland? I believe there is. And so you start there. Then you go on a journey, and the journey gets you essentially to the adventuring location. An adventuring location. Because your campaign obviously doesn't have to just be one adventuring location. It can be multiple. But you're going from Bree to the first place. You're like, okay, here we're, imagine you're going from imagine, to put in, say, Keep on the Borderlands terms, you're assuming that the Caves of Chaos were further away than where they are. You're going from the Keep to approximately where the caves are, that area at least, because you may not know where the caves are, but you're going, okay, here's a route where we think they are close to. Okay, that would be your journey, getting from that safe spot to an adventuring zone area. I'm torn on the kind of skill, because they do it like a skill challenge, and I'm torn on that. I'll say that in its benefit, it resolves quickly. If you are a table and you don't want to spend a bunch of time on the wilderness, you kind of want to get to the interesting bits, this is going to get you to the interesting bits. And in Middle Earth and say the Third Age, which is where the One Ring basically takes place, there's not a ton going on it's It's not like there's whole kinds of, it's not crazy town out there in the wilderness. It's kind of, I think, by design, based on the setting, it's fairly sparse. You're in the Shire. You've got, if you look at the maps and you go, okay, we're at the Shire. You got Bree that's close by, and you can go to the Grey Havens, and you can go all the way to the coast, which is a little bit far, kind of Blue Mountains, or you can head to the Misty Mountains and essentially, Rivendell, or you can go nothing is really close. Like they're this little bubble of safety and whatever in the middle of essentially a wasteland that's been depopulated by the numerous battles and wars that of Sauron, the Witch King, whatever, right? The Northern Kingdom, Arnor, which would have been in there, is long gone. Gondor obviously is not has not come up. Like it's been left by itself and kind of protected and kept in this kind of idyllic isolation by the Rangers and whatnot. But man, it is not a lot going on there. So I totally understand why they would choose to not engage with a whole bunch of stuff like down in the details or in the kind of nitty gritty of these journeys through these areas when a lot of it, there's just not a lot there, right? Oh, Reverend's talking about Electric Bastion since like Forbidden Planet. Okay. I got you. Well, Electric Bastion definitely sounds like a cool setting I'll have to look at. Though I don't know if it's would be my vibe, kind of my everyday sci-fi fantasy or sci-fantasy vibe, but I'll definitely look into it more. Good thing to do as a read at some point. So anyway, so the journeys, back to One Ring. The journeys kind of you different players will get called upon to do things, but it's basically making a role. Like everyone picks a role, ROLE, like the scout, the guide. I don't know if they call it the guide. Basically, there's someone who's guiding, who's making travel roles. There's a scout who's maybe making kind of some kind of observational type role, a hunter, these kind of things. Okay, so they're rolling, and now the better the guide rolls for those travel roles, the less other rolls you need to make. So the better your guide is, the more you can travel before you're going to run into some kind of incident. But the incident is really just a skill challenge, and the stakes are usually shadow, which you don't want, or fatigue, which you don't want. But you're going to get some, at least fatigue, probably anyway, and you're making your way across. Now, I like fatigue, and that's why I made my own version of it in the Hexposition notebook, because I think it's a really clever way of showing you're not spending a lot of time in the journey at the table. It can be pretty darn quick if you want. It can be as low as fast, basically, as you want. But the fatigue is that, man, it's tiring. It takes a toll on you to get somewhere. And it both scales because the more, so what happens is you have your health, which I forget they call it endurance. And then you've got your encumbrance and fatigue. And encumbrance and fatigue add together, and they start coming up against your endurance. And what happens is there's some kind of, you end up with some, could be large, could be small, gap between where your endurance is, which is essentially, what your hit points are, and what that fatigue plus encumbrance is. Once you slip to those numbers are equal, so say I started off with 30 endurance, but because I'm carrying some heavier armor, I got a big two-hander weapon, I got a helm, I got some other stuff. Maybe my encumbrance is 20. I think my dwarf character, maybe their encumbrance is 16 or 18. Maybe 16. I don't remember. Maybe 18. That's just starting off. So I'm in Bree, and I'm fresh as a daisy. I got 30 hit points, but I got 16 encumbrance. So now my buffer zone, it's still, for any kind of fatigue, is only 14. Okay. Now we go on the travel, and now maybe I pick up 8 fatigue. Now I'm at 24. Still got 30 hit points, but now my fatigue's 24. So what happens is we get into a fight, and I get hit a couple times, or maybe just hit really once. And now let's say now my hit points, my endurance drops from 30 to 24. So now they're even Steven. What happens is I become, what's the word? not fatigued. It's not, I forget the word. It's not, I forget the word they have, but basically it's like there's a keyword for it. Now I'm spacing out what it is. But just imagine I'm saying, I think it's wearied. I become wearied. Now what happens when I become wearied is everything becomes harder. So in the One Ring, you're rolling a d12, and then if you have any kind of pips in a skill, you're rolling some number of d6 equal to those pips. So if I am an excellent, say, hunter, okay, and let's say I have 3 skill points, pips in hunter. If I'm rolling to hunt, I roll the d12, and I roll 3d6. And that's on a player-facing target number, which is another nice thing I like. So it's okay. So maybe I got to beat 15. But it's pretty good, right? I got d12 and then 3d6 to beat 15. I kind of like my chances more often than not. If I can roll, average on a d12 is 6.5, average is 3.5, so just a d12 and a d6 is 10, 2d6 13.5, 3d6 17. I think that's about right. So my average is about 17. So if I got to roll 15, I'm feeling pretty good. But when you become wearied, you're rolling these dice. If you get a 1, because usually you're adding everything together. So even if you just get 1s on these, or 2s or 3s, they still can help you. Maybe I rolled 11 on here, and let's say my skill, I don't know, my target number is 14. I only need 3 out of these 3, which means I'll still make it, right? So all numbers count. Well, when you become wearied, you lose the 1, 2s, and 3s. They just drop to 0. That can swing things in a hurry. It's bad. And the kicker is, let's say we beat that combat. All right, cool. Well, I can take some kind of rest, and I can get back my hit points. I think you can take kind of a long rest type situation, and you can get back your health. Your endurance will come back. The fatigue, you don't lose. The fatigue doesn't come back. You only get that back when you go rest back. You basically go to the fellowship phase, so you're back somewhere safe and rest. So you really feel the travel, really, you feel it in a way that I like. Now, I mentioned before, it scales because we're level 1, or I don't know if there's really levels, but wherever we're beginners. I think my dwarf maybe has 28 health. Let's just say that's something like our endurance. I just said 30 because it was easier, but say 20, or let's say it is 30. Okay, maybe we adventure some more. I advance some more. Now I've got 40 endurance. That naturally buffers the amount of fatigue I can take on. I can take on more longer journeys out more into the wilderness. But it's still going to catch up with me eventually. I can be Aragorn. I don't know how much endurance Aragorn would have in the One Ring. Maybe he's got, let's say, 60, so he can go really far. But the fatigue's still going to catch up, and that fatigue never goes away. So what if we're going on an adventure where we go to one spot, then another spot, then another spot? It keeps creeping up. So how do we get rid of it? Well, we got to go home, or we got to go somewhere else. And I really like that, of having to no, we got to go back. And Moria really kind of crystallized that, because it was like, we can only go in Moria so long. As long as we survive, we can get our health back to keep going, but we can't get rid of that fatigue. So we're getting hammered down, and we have these buffers. And then the other thing is that Shadow's another one. We have Hope and Shadow, and Hope you can spend, so it's falling. Shadow you're taking on is rising. And when those two meet, you become, I forget, there's another, they have a really good phrase for that one too. But I can't remember what it is. But basically, more bad stuff's happening. And those are also, it's hard to get Hope back, and it's hard to get rid of Shadow. So it puts some natural impetus to hit a place, and then, man, we got to go back. And I like that rhythm, because forcing you to go back means that it forces you to engage with that fellowship, which is so you have, journeying, right? Which is getting into the places. Then you have the adventuring phase where you're in the place, you're doing stuff. And then you have the fellowship phase where you can do research, and they have a list of things you can do. And by forcing you to go back to some place where you can rest and taking on that fellowship phase, it's inviting you to do those other things. It's inviting you to research. It's inviting you to talk to your mentor, your, what do they call it? I forget what they call the person. Basically, everyone you form a company, and your company kind of has a sponsor. You can kind of talk to your sponsor. You can do a number of things. If the game didn't force you to kind of go back and do those, you might not interact with a lot of those because you don't have to. Like, we can just stay in the dungeon. We'll just do it all the time. Like, ooh, just go off on our, like, I think that's kind of like it happens in like games like 5e, right? Or they don't compel you to go back, so you just keep pushing forward and just kind of going, and so you just miss a lot of stuff. Here it's like, no, we're here anyway. Like, we had to go back to Bree to get rid of all this fatigue and do all this other stuff. And hey, while we're here anyway, so let's do some fellowship stuff. Can we go up a level or, advance? Okay, let's do that. Can we talk to our guy? Let's do that. Do we have some items we need to check out? Yeah. Can we research some stuff about where we're going to? Yeah. Can we, so I really, really like that rhythm of play. And Moria adds the other wrinkle that it's so big. It's miles and miles and miles long that once you discover areas in Moria, you use the journey mechanic to go from area to area. So it's a mega dungeon, but it's a mega dungeon that's kind of, and I haven't looked at the Moria book because I'm playing in it. So I haven't cracked it open. I don't know if every square inch of Moria's map. I don't know how they did the maps, basically. We do have a kind of an overarching map, but I don't know how detailed the maps are for the referee, the lore master in the book. I won't look until we're kind of definitely done for a while because I don't want to spoil things. But you're like, okay, we've discovered I think at one point we're like, oh, we know where the Chamber of Mazarbul is, which is, made famous in Fellowship of the Ring. Great. We use the journey to get there. So we don't have to go through like turn by turn. 'Cause I think what ends up happening, I actually have not played in a bunch of mega dungeons. So someone who plays a lot of mega dungeons can help me. But I imagine that at certain points you get in the mega dungeon, because it's so large, you kind of feel like, well, look, we can just get back to where we were. Like, or maybe we'll do a couple of roll checks, but you know what? We're not going to do turn by turn through all this stuff. We're going to say that we know about how long it takes. We know whatever. So maybe I'll roll some random encounters. Then we'll just say you're there or to a starting point. Like even in non-mega dungeons, I feel like this is definitely experienced this as a player. I don't know if I've done it as a GM myself, but I probably have, where it's like, hey, we've been back and forth to the dungeon. It hasn't been long enough that everything's restocked. So you're going back to the third level. You know what? You guys know the way. Let me roll a couple of rolls, and then we'll see if something catches you on levels 1 or 2, and then we'll assume you're going down the stairs to level 3, right? I feel like someone can correct me, but I think that's a thing that is probably fairly common in the dungeon. And that's essentially what the journey mechanic is allowing you to do. But that fatigue is kicking in. So it's another great, to me, it's a great fictional mechanical match for like, yeah, you're going miles and miles and miles. You're traveling 3 days through Moria, and maybe you didn't encounter any orcs or trolls or anything worse, but it's wearing on you. And on our last foray, we barely made it out of there. We made it out of Moria by the skin of our teeth, because we went in. We were basically going to we were on the west side, and we'd found a way into Moria, which was a really fun thing. Just getting into Moria was a real challenge. It wasn't like, oh, you're at the gate, you go in, like, yeah, and here's the adventure starts. Like, no, we had to find, and we did a lot of finagling around trying to find different ways into Moria. And I don't know all the lore that they were pulling from or whatever, but they had some neat, I feel like they did some cool things with the Moria layout and what's kind of in Moria. So we found this other way in, and we were on the west side. So, okay, great. And we decided we're going to try to go somewhere more to the east side. It's like, yeah, but this is like whatever, so many days. And we started picking them that fatigue, and then we got into a fight, and then it was like, oh my gosh, we barely made it out of that fight. I think we had a couple people who were unconscious. We just barely managed it. Now we're on the east side, and now we got to get back west, and we've got this fatigue. And it's like, oh my gosh, if we run into something, and like it was one of these things, like if we got to get out of here, we got to get out. The way is shut. Like, we got to get out. Oh my gosh, are we going to get out of here? Like, and I think the fatigue was really additive to that pressure of, it's not as simple as just make the rolls. Like, man, because if we get into trouble, even though we're not hurt in the sense that our hit points are down, we have so little room for error before we start having to go weary, and then all the bad things are going weary, and then we already had some people whose shadow had overtaken their hope, so that had some more bad stuff. I mean, we were burning. I don't remember if it was before. Yeah, it was like that last fight before we tried. Man, we were burning hope left and right just to kind of stay alive. It was a lot of fun. But I felt like the journey thing is something I'll probably talk about that something specific for doing it for your kind of mega dungeons, or if you want to have dungeons, not necessarily mega dungeons, but aspects that are separate from each other, but you can access them, but you want to kind of, I feel like using that journey mechanic. Yeah, I thought it was just really, I guess ultimately I thought it was really clever. It did what it needed to do. I'm sure some people will not like it because you're kind of hand waving the navigation and in essence the mapping, though fictionally we had a map, so it wasn't totally about us getting lost. It wasn't really about that part of it, but I thought it worked really well. Reverend says many mega dungeons have alternative access points that can be discovered from inside to make it easier to skip stuff that's already been done. Yes, that's true. But that's another thing that sometimes like it doesn't always make sense to have those, and sometimes it can feel a little bit like, you know, this doesn't, I guess the thing I like about the journey is it doesn't require something like that. It can often make sense for there to be these access points, but it can also seem a little bit like that doesn't really make sense, but you do it because you want to give that access point. Now you can just use that journey mechanic because it's, and the thing is I like about it is it's not really it is a shortcut in the sense of you might not run into as much combat-y stuff. The part of the idea in Moria is it's not filled with orcs. Like, yes, there are orcs and other things in Moria, but Moria is so big. The realities are that it's much more empty than it is orcs, even though there's a bunch of orcs in it. You know, it's like, oh, we have, you know, imagine like New York City has been emptied and now there's 1,000 orcs in it and you. Well, it's like, yeah, 1,000 orcs, like that's a lot of orcs, but they're spread out along how much? So you think like in all of New York City, 1,000 orcs is actually not a lot. You know, in that way, right? You don't want to run into any of them, but at the same time, it's like, there's probably a lot of the city you could walk around in and not get found. So, you know, I think they play into that too. But I thought it worked. I thought it worked really well, and you didn't have to, and you could kind of go from anywhere to anywhere. It didn't depend on like finding the secret shaft that's been dug 1,000 feet down. You know, blah blah blah. You know, not that I have a specific problem with it, but it's just a different way to do it. I thought was clever. Now the other part of it was we also played. So the Moria part when we kind of, I'm lucky enough that this little group that we have that's been playing the One Ring, there's 5 of us. Yeah, 5 of us total. And at this point, 4 of us have run adventures. 3 of us have run a couple sessions. I ran a couple sessions, maybe it was a 3 in Bree. I think we ran maybe 4 or 5 of Moria. We did Gondor, maybe it was a 2-shot, and the last, and then we have one person who hasn't run anything yet, and the other player who's they're a really big kind of 5e person, and they bought the 5e, I forget what it's called, like, is it just called Lord of the Rings 5e now? What is it called now? It's not Adventures in Middle-earth anymore, right? It's called something else, I can't remember, whatever it is, and he had the box set, and he ran us through that one. And that was not a great time. Now, caveats here. I don't know how much was them freelancing stuff. I don't know how much, you know, they weren't super prepared. So I know there's some elements that they were kind of going through the book as they were coming along, right? So I don't know, you know, there's a lot of things I don't know, but it really felt like a bad. It felt like there were some hallmarks of just like not great design. So there was, but it wasn't. It was fun in its own way, but it wasn't an adventure that I would recommend. Now, before I haven't read it. I'd love to get a hold of it. I don't know if you can get it outside of the kit or digitally or whatever, so I could take a look at it just to kind of confirm or say like, okay, this is where they did something that didn't work out that well, or whether it's the game, the adventure that did something. But it felt like one, they did that thing that I feel like adventures want to do, and maybe it's just a 5e thing where in the One Ring, you have that mentor sponsor, I forget the name of it, for your company. And it can be somebody famous from the books. You can have like Gandalf can be your kind of mentor, or it might be, I think ours for the Moria campaign, it's Balin. In the Shire, you can have a Bilbo can be your mentor. I think Círdan and the Grey Havens can be a mentor. I don't know if Elrond. I don't know if Elrond, because they don't cover the books that I have are mostly around Shire and West and not so much Rivendell. So I don't know if Elrond probably can. And I'm sure once they're expanding things, get Galadriel and all these different people can be your mentors. And they're kind of there, but you don't really need to interface them directly. I think when I ran the Bree game, I started with a letter arriving from Círdan saying, "Hey, could you guys check this thing out for me? Like, I've heard rumors of this thing. Can you guys go check it out?" And that was where they came in. It wasn't even a cameo. I was like, that's it. In the starter adventure, Aragorn, they gave Aragorn a cameo, and I don't know, it just turned out it was bad. Like, it was. And I kind of have the senses from the adventure, because it just seems like the kind of thing that somebody would think, like, oh, we're starting out like that. Well, they got to meet somebody from like Lord of the Rings, right? They got to meet Aragorn or Gimli or Legolas or somebody, right? We got to have them meet him. But it was so like cringy. It turned into a really funny moment, but not funny in a way that served the game. It was just funny as a player thing. So what happened was, and I think part of this made it worse because the GM wanted to throw in a combat to kind of work through the combat a little bit. So they had us start with like an army of orcs chasing us to Bree, which doesn't, this person also, of all of us, so of the 5 players, the person who's running this is, I would say, the least invested in the setting. Not that they dislike the setting. They like the setting. They like it a lot. But they're the least invested in, I would say, the setting thematically. So as me, if I'm running the One Ring, I would never have some huge number of orcs chasing a mixed party of hobbits and whatever to Bree, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, I'm in my brain, I'm like, that they're not there. Like, what are they? This does not make sense, right? But they had that happen. So we get chased to Bree, and that was really before we got sent off. Then we got sent off into the sort of northern downs where there's some hill folk, and the hill folk are being raided. And they're being, the idea was that the hill folk are being raided and their people are being taken back. I want to say I don't know if it was it by orcs? I think it was by orcs to some place literally practically in a spur of the Misty Mountains. I mean, it was a fair distance away, and something bad's happening to them. Okay. So we get in there, we have a really hard fight at the kind of getting into the town. And this is what I'm talking when I'm mentioning about, like, I think sometimes how the scenarios can force you into fights that you might not want. The One Ring to me is not a game about fighting stuff. Now you may have to obviously fight things. That just comes with the territory. You're gonna have to fight stuff. I get it. But in the scenario that I picked out of the book to run, I liked it, but there was a point where essentially a trap is sprung and you got to fight stuff. And there's no way, like, you can't, it's one of these things where you walk into a room and basically there's a scripted, like, something happens and undead pop up and you got to fight them. And presumably you could run away. Okay. But basically they're undead, they're mindless. You got to fight them. There's no way around. It's like, here's the combat now. And especially in a game like the One Ring, in the kind of Lord of the Rings setting, that's not really what I would prefer. If, yeah, there's something down there and there's danger, but, maybe you have to interact with it or do something. You can try not to, you can try to figure it out, whatever, not so, like the Watcher in the water. The weird thing, it doesn't seem right. Well, what happens? Boromir starts throwing rocks in the water and stuff, and then it kind of, right, things happen, and there's questions about whatever, if the ring impelled it in some way. But just putting that aside, spooky lake or pond, you start splashing around in it, you start throwing rocks in it. Well, now it happens, but presumably a different party of Fellowship might have done something else to not splash and not throw rocks in there, and then maybe they don't wake it up, kind of thing. And the same way, that's what I would have preferred for that undead situation. Maybe if you check out the crypts, you start opening the tombs, they attack. That's kind of classic undead, right? Oh, I opened the tomb. Oh, the thing's something inside and it reaches out to grab me. Fine. But this was just like on a cue, things just reach out to grab you, which, and especially in this kind of game, I don't love so much. So we had one of those. We're trying to get into the town and orcs attacked us. Tough fight. that one I might say might have been the GM. They might have freelanced that one. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. We run into some kids, and like all the adults have basically been captured and dragged. At this point, we did not know where they were leading. Our impression was, and this might have been a mistake again by the GM on the distance, like we didn't know they were basically taking them almost all the way to the Misty Mountains. We were like, oh my God, all the way to the Misty, like this is a big thing. And then we're like, they're taking this whole village essentially captive, and that's a big thing. Well, I think we send the kids to Bree, and we say, okay, listen, because there's some elder kids. We're like, look, do you know the way to Bree? And the kid's like, yeah, we know. Okay, take the kids and go to Bree, because you're not safe in this village that's just been ransacked. And it was another weird thing that the village, these are these kind of hill folk who are not really aligned with the free peoples. I think they're more or less more aligned with the orcs, but whatever's happening, the orcs are preying on them anyway. So we're kind of helping them, but it feels a little bit like, not that we shouldn't be helping them, but it's also a little weird thing. Like, these are not really our friends. So I remember even when we were approaching the town, we're like, well, or should we go to this town? Because if we go there, aren't they likely to attack us? Because they're kind of, I don't know if they're Morgoth worshippers, or they're not nice people, but whatever. But it turned out they were all taken captive already. So it didn't matter. Except for the orcs who were apparently waiting in ambush. So we got that. Now we're figuring out, okay, now we're like, oh my gosh, we got to trek across all the way, I think, to Rivendell, or maybe past Rivendell, or some nearby, not nearby, but in that kind of side of the west to get to this, I forget the name of the mountain that's kind of in this hill sort of spur of the Misty Mountains, because that's where they've taken him. Well, who do we run into? Aragorn. So we go, Aragorn, my gosh, we are so happy to see you. This is our first adventure, and probably the whole sum of everything going on felt like, man, there's a lot going on here. We could really use your help, Aragorn. This is a big deal. We got an army of orcs apparently operating with impunity out here. I'm presuming that we don't know what the Rangers are doing, so we didn't chastise him on, like, apparently Rangers aren't doing your job very well, since we were chased to the gates of Bree by an army of orcs. But like, there's orcs running around. We've got all this thing, like, can you help us? And Aragorn's like, no, I can't help you. Have you seen my horse? And this is where we kind of lost as players. We're like, what? Like, we got a whole village that's gone missing. You have orcs operating here. They are dragging everybody across, and you're worried. You're looking for a horse? And he's like, in Aragorn's like, yeah, I gotta go. I got something to do south, but I can't find my horse. Hey, if you see my horse, I'd appreciate it. Now, this is funny to me, because I go, if we see your horse, like, kind of like, look out for my horse. Like, well, what good would it do us to look out for your horse? How are we going to get the horse to you? So what if 2 days from now we find your horse? What exactly are we supposed to do? We don't have an Aragorn bat signal to send up saying, Aragorn, we found your horse. It's like, what are we doing? Like, you're going one way, and you're the best tracker in the world. You can't find your horse. We're supposed to find your horse, and then we're supposed to give it to you, and you're not helping us at all. You're like, no, man, I ain't got time for whole villages kidnapped. I got something south to do, right? Now, I get it. I get it from an adventure standpoint. The goal of the adventure should not be to offload it to Aragorn. And this is why it makes no sense to introduce Aragorn. It's something that we felt like as players and as characters, like, we're over our heads. We're dealing with way bigger numbers of enemies. This is a huge operation. We're traveling all the way to the Misty Mountains. We are not prepared for that. We are not. We didn't feel like we were advanced enough for this. This feels like something certainly in the Aragorn pay range. But I obviously understanding that, okay, this is our adventure. However, you could have something more if you're going to put Aragorn in there to do than just be like, hey, man, you feel like going on a side quest for my horse? And then the funny thing was, like, we were like one turn. I don't even remember what it was, because some things were done kind of loosey-goosey with kind of the operating stuff. But it's like, he's like, oh, well, anyone want to make I don't know, whatever, like some kind of like a spot check kind of thing. Like, okay, I made my roll. Oh, we see the horse. And it was so funny the way he did it. I don't think he meant it to be funny, but maybe he did because it was hilarious. We see the horse, it got hurt, it was like laying down. So I mend the horse gets up, and then we can see like popping up from like behind like the bushes, something is Aragorn, like, ooh, ooh, oh, my horse. It was the most funny, like out of place, like comedic, like all of a sudden we're just doing this, all of a sudden, like there's Aragorn popping up. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, thank you for finding my horse. Here's a what did he give us? He gave us like that drink. I forget the name of it. The one, I don't think it shows up in the movies, but it's the drink that Elrond has. I forget the name of it. It's like a healing potion essentially, but it has a much cooler elven name. I just can't remember it. It's like the draft of Rivendell. And he's like, here, take one of these. And he takes his horse and leaves. And we just had this really hilarious moment where we just started cursing him. One of the players was playing a ranger, and all he could do was just shake his head in shame at what's happened to the rangers. I had this whole joke because I was playing this hobbit. So I had this whole gag running where I was imagining that if this hobbit were to live through the Lord of the Rings and then get to your that he comes like King Elisar comes to like to visit the Frodo, whatever, like comes to visit Hobbiton, to visit the Shire, that this like it's not even that, I don't know if it's only like 20 years away, so maybe not even that old a hobbit. She's just shaking her fist, cursing him out like, F you, you bastard, you couldn't even find your horse, you couldn't, hey Dave, you couldn't find, like, you idiot, like you doing all this stuff, you couldn't even help us with this thing, you had to go run off for your horse. It made us all laugh, but it was not a credit to us taking the adventure seriously. And then we get to the end of it. I guess spoilers for this thing. We had to fight this kind of creature, and it felt like we were kind of roped into the fight. There didn't seem to be a way to get through this without fighting the creature. Maybe there was. We could have missed it. It was almost, we made it out of there, but it was tough. It was a tough slog of a fight, which is, again, not really what I'm looking for in the One Ring. But I don't know if it's because it's the 5e thing that maybe they lean more into the combat because there's an expectation from the 5e folks about the fighting of stuff. I also wasn't thrilled with some of the stuff they didn't have. Like, I don't think they had fatigue in there. They didn't have some of the things I really liked because it was kind of 5e based. Unfortunately, I need to read through the rules a bit again because there might have been stuff we missed. We've been used, and one of the things is that it's particularly like we've been used to playing the One Ring now. So it's really kind of funny. We kept injecting One Ring stuff into 5e. I don't think it really did any harm one way or another, changed anything, but it was just kind of fun. They were like, oh, we get a opening volley and this stuff. And like the 5e rules use 5e combat stuff, so there is no opening volley. I think we were looking for, and I think at one point I was looking for, I don't know if it was fatigue or something. I was like, oh, do we have this? They're like, no, we don't have it. Like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. Kind of like that. No, and Reverend says, wasn't arrow root makes the biggest pancakes? No, it was definitely Aragorn, son of Arathorn, as Strider, and yeah, he was a jerk. Strider was a jerk. Very, very. Don't meet your heroes, folks. Very, very disappointing. Very disappointing. Well, and I actually have to this weekend. I have to get some time together because we're going back to Bree. So Tuesday, we took a week off. And Tuesday we'll be starting out, but it's Bree, which means that I'm running. So I got to prep some Bree stuff. But I will say it's been really fun to have at least 3 of us, maybe 4 of us, maybe even all of us at some point, all rotating, running the system. And what we've done is we just have different fellowships. They're not all at the same time. I think the group that I'm running in Bree is a few years ahead or behind of the group in Moria or the group in Gondor. So we all have multiple characters. So I have a dwarf for the Moria game. I'm running I'm running a human for the Gondor game. Obviously, I'm running the game, running the world for the Bree game. It's been really cool. So it's really been really neat that we've been able to find this little core group, and we're all interested in running the game and playing the game. Been great. So we'll be back to Bree. So I got to figure out some Bree stuff at some point. I was gonna talk about making these kind of what do you got, playbooks for my game Troupe, because I'm kind of giving it a little, not an overhaul, but I'm just kind of getting. I've decided a couple of things I'm doing with that is I'm putting in a stronger frame. So the game has this kind of idea of this kind of, the intro talks about sort of like this comet event and then like stuff happening, but I just kind of have it there in background right now. I've just decided I'm going to kind of inject it more strongly into things so that things I'm going to be like a part of character creation. I'm going to link more to kind of like the comet event. And I wanted to work through one of the playbooks for kind of a berserker character or class, but ran out of time. I got dinner to cook. So maybe in another stream, probably on the other channel, because I haven't been doing that so much on this channel. I've been doing it on the prep and play channel, but you never know. I just thought, I could do that today since I wasn't doing the Reddit stuff. But we talked about other things, which is fine and good. I think that's all I've got, folks. Any lines? Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything else before I close her down? I mentioned the Hexed notebook. It's on itch. I'll drop a link to my stuff on the website if you're interested and you didn't see it before. I'll drop a link. It's fresh out of the oven. So if you go here, this has links. Exposition notebook 1. That has links to itch and drive-through. I prefer itch, but more people are on drive-through, so hit up whichever one if you're interested. Obviously, no harm, no worries. If you don't, then I do periodically put, whenever people purchase copies, I do put community copies up there. So depending on when you happen to look at it, you might be able to get one for naught. See it? Yeah, I guess that's it. So have a great weekend if you're here live listening to this, or whatever day, night if you're listening to it another time. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.